Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Enabling Tomorrow. I'm here with Jessica Rothenberg-Aalami. She's the CEO and co-founder of SoEd. She has also completed several university studies and holds a PhD. She's the co-author of Technology at the Margins. She lives in Silicon Valley. You're on the board member of several organizations. What else are you doing? Is there anything I forgot?
No, I live on coffee and chocolate. That's the only addition I would add.
Okay. Great. Thanks for joining us, Jessica. And my name is Tim Metz, and I'm the marketing director at KaiOS. Jessica, to get started, can you tell us in a few minutes how you got to here from the start of your career to where we are here today?
Yeah. How am I 26 years in mobile learning? Actually, my life started on the go. Actually, I was born in the Silicon Valley to artist parents who struggled like many do to get and keep jobs. So we essentially lived on the go. We had a converted green school bus with 6 bunks, and we traveled state to state and school to school. And at that point is when I saw the disparities of access to learning and opportunity depending on where you lived. It was something that lived, experienced, formed my worldview that really having access to mobile learning on the go would make a difference. And so when I was back in the Silicon Valley, a 15-year-old student, I was also on my own and working 3 jobs. So this mix of mobile learning, on-the-go learning was intimately important in my mind. And I became an entrepreneur committed to this space then. And since then, I've built 3 companies. I mentioned 3 degrees all around trying to crack the code. How do we create a mobile learning that is accessible, affordable, and essentially relevant for all?
Wow, so you've really had that it's really a childhood dream that you've pursued.
Yes, it is. It's definitely, so I feel like I'm living my dream.
Nice, that's great. And so what are you doing today? What does SoEd do?
Today, as I would say, one of the first of its kind, because we are a mobile learning, 100% remote learning and telehealth platform, we're actually able to deliver these micro lessons, less than 3 minutes of real learning, real life sounds of teachers and even doctors. They're recorded, and we're able to send those to any mobile device, and through 2-way confirming of understanding, anyone with a mobile device, even a feature phone without internet, can actually learn all the way to a full program, not only of adult basic education, but a work-ready program, even learn a job track. So we're universally accessible mobile learning approach.
And what drives you today to follow that mission? Is it still the same as the dream you had when you were young, or has it changed? Like what inspires you and keeps you going?
I think the only thing that changed from being a child and dreaming about bridging the divides, and what if everyone had opportunity and access to a dignity and livelihood. That was really important, seeing the gap between the have and have nots. The only difference is that I had to study a lot about the digital divide, what it looked like, how different it is depending on the person and the neighborhood. So I think the only thing I would say is different, that is you really have to understand the needs that each learner has and try to design for it. Well, you know, tech has only recently caught up to our ability to individualize learning over mobile messaging. So it's a really exciting time to push and drive innovation further in this space, that we can individualize learning, make it accessible universally, like not just to those with internet, and also co-create solutions that can be made available to cities, to communities, nationwide and internationally. So we're spending a lot of time pushing the innovation envelope, trying to figure out how to make our co-created solutions available to millions, if not billions.
That's great. And so listening to your story, it sounds like you spend time in a lot of different, industries, or like part of it is like social entrepreneurship, part of it is tech. You spend a lot of time in academia. What are the things you would wish that one would learn from the other? Like what can they learn from each other?
I wish they got along.
Yeah.
Better. I think there's so much opportunity for collaborating. I know the terms like cross-pollination and collaboration are often used, but practice, it's really challenging. I remember on one campus, I've been on many university campuses, like the social scientists wouldn't talk to the computer scientists, who wouldn't talk to the community-based nonprofit organizations, who wouldn't even talk to the end users they aim to help. So once we start to understand that it's about bringing so many different types of people and strengths to the table, we're still siloing our solutions. Our solutions ends up being very specific. It's either over-engineered or too specific or generalized to where it's not meaningful. So I would argue that collaboration, cross-pollination, and more is really in high demand.
Mm. And what about the tech scene? I mean, you're in the middle of Silicon Valley. I think most people are pursuing different missions there. How is it for you to be over there doing this?
Yeah, well, so if you're born in the Silicon Valley, there's this notion here that technology is a panacea. It will solve all things. And I've always said, technology is a tool. And it's the humans behind the technology, designing it, the users of the technology, the ability to connect humans actually using technology and helping each other all access information and the tools we need that make it really useful. So I always talk about the human side of tech. Who's it affecting? How can we do that better? Because to date, most of the solutions I've worked with here have been very tech-centered. Mm. So we're all about talking about human-centered and driven by actual needs. And I think we could do a lot better, all of us, in actually developing with those end users who will drive innovation if they are asked.
Yeah. And what kind of are there other challenges that you have as a social entrepreneur? Or would you even call yourself a social entrepreneur, just to be sure?
Well, it's changed over time. So originally they just thought I was always trying to figure out how to alleviate poverty. They'd ask me these things. So it was never well understood the work that I was doing as an entrepreneur. You know, are you a not-for-profit organization? Are you for profit? Are you an academic? So I've been labeled an academic entrepreneur, a global social enterprise, a for-profit, an advisor. The thing I think is tricky is that when you go across all these communities, and I've worked in over 40 countries on the ground, humbled by what I've been learning, it's this need to put somebody in a box is a barrier to innovation, that actually it's around solving the problem together we should be focusing on and pushing that. So I would say one of the challenges is the labeling and the need to box. Let's focus on the problem, and then ultimately we'll come up a solution. So I've been, nobody quite knows what I am.
And what do you find is the solution to that? Is it to go along with the box, or to try to redefine every time what you are?
Yeah, I think, for I would say a good at least 10 to 15 years, I felt like I was this constant translator, communicating what the work I was doing in that language, whether I was talking to the United Nations, or I was talking to somebody in academia, or if I was talking internationally. It was this constant game of trying to get enough connected with the person I'm talking to communicate it. Now I find I have to be clearer about what we do and hope people will come along that way, because it became even more challenging to communicate what we do, because so many people are understanding what we do differently. I would say we have had the greatest struggle and also the greatest opportunity to push the assumptions people have about entrepreneurship, about this type of work. You can literally do incredibly impactful work at scale. You can generate high revenue at scale. You can reach an unlimited number of people. This idea that you can only do one or the other, I think, has prevented social enterprise as an impactful business from reaching the scale of need. So I would say, let's push the envelope there, not just assume, well, I have to go make a lot of money over here, and then I'll eventually go back to doing impactful, important work that is really in service to humanity. I would say business and good business should actually be doing that from day one.
Mm. And do you think, I mean, many people are saying that that's more and more where every business is going? I mean, that's where the trend, or where everything is going. Do you see that as well, or do you think that's too optimistic?
Well, I think people are hype driven, right? Under duress or pandemic, it brings out something special. But I think people, it's always this ebb and flow between hope and then where I think people end up going back a little bit to default. So I would say I'm cautiously optimistic. I've seen this ebb and flow a few times, have worked on extraordinary products and projects that aim to do so many things about affordable, relevant, accessible technologies, only to find they get shut down overnight for, you would think, not even important reasons. But the majority of the world is not receiving access to technology that's meaningful.
Mm.
And it is on us as technologists, as those who want to make impact in communities, to develop technologies that matter.
Yeah. Do you have other examples of that in Silicon Valley around you?
The idea that we should be building those together, or that they die quickly, or the ebb and flow.
Oh no, that you should be building them together, like other interesting initiatives you've seen recently that you're excited about.
There are, I have seen, when I started collecting what I would say these incredible innovations that would be co-created coming from the field all over the world. I started collecting those in the late 90s.
Oh wow.
It got incredible. There were amazing solutions that people have come, resourceful from every community across the world. What I saw happening, however, is that they wouldn't last. It was like the world is littered in pilots. They wouldn't get the funding to sustain. They wouldn't be, it wasn't a way to sort of bring together some great ideas. So what I keep seeing over and over and over is reinventing the same idea. Mm-hmm. Instead of building on and improving on some extraordinary innovations that have been out, at least since I've been in this space in the mid 90s. And that, I think, is a loss.
Yeah. Do you see any role for yourself or anybody to help, or do you do like mentor people, or like come up with best practices of how to avoid that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I think that would be extraordinary. Let's really honor all that's been done before and catalog it, because I have had many conversations where it's deja vu over and over. I'm like, yes, I remember. Yeah. And that's been done. And it's almost an honoring of local innovations in emerging markets, the reverse innovation that actually we have benefited from greatly in Silicon Valley. Like these types of stories, honoring what's been done, that is incredibly important for the next generation. And they're not getting that information. We are rewarding the newest, shiniest devices, the things that have come up potentially overnight. I have to argue that it's really those that have been synthesized over long time, incubated and improved over years and years, that may offer the most potential for impact.
Mm. And do you still have this collection, or did you stop? You said you started collecting.
I found it I gave up in 2003, and I thought, it just became, as soon as you open your eyes, that the world is full of innovators everywhere. We just might not have the feedback loop for it. Yeah. That becomes both a little depressing, but also a definite sign of hope. Like as soon as we open up and look at all of it, we could do it. And that's, I think, one of the cautionary tales of being an entrepreneur in the Silicon Valley. We're not on the right time zone. So you have to be up 24/7 here, yeah. Listening to the rest of the world, that you have to be aware of all that's happening elsewhere, and not just in one place like the Valley.
So how do you, maybe that's I was curious about that. If I read everything you're doing, how do you manage your day and your time? Like, are you up 24/7, or what does your day look like, an average day?
Well, I started working, so the greatest piece of working a few jobs and doing early on, the juggle was something that became, like so many people, required for survival. I think the only piece that I may have added over time is working truly transnationally and internationally. You need to be available very early in the morning and very late. So I developed early on a sense of this, be available any time of day, 7 days a week, but that doesn't mean that you're not living life fully. You're just blocking it differently than a traditional blocked notion of time, which serves me well running a company that says anytime, anywhere learning in 3-minute lessons to meet the need. So it actually is a way I've done that. And so that's the way I've been able to manage multiple work streams. I have a family with 3 children. I'm active in community because mentoring and providing input is important to me, and it helps me learn and grow. So I think that just sort of requires a very flexible way of thinking about time to deliver on all of those demands.
But then what does it look like? Like, can anybody literally call you at any time, or it's more like you have certain blocks for certain projects, or it's all kind of mixed together?
For a lot of years, you literally could get me anytime. And I had to do a bit of soul searching. That actually, it needs to be two-way. Just being that accessible, right? That doesn't protect any space. So I would often be at 3 a.m. that person you would text, and I would be that on-call support. and I had a little bit of a health scare about 6 years ago, and that's actually when I started to realize, oh, this isn't unlimited. This flexibility. Hard work is important, but not at the point of your health. So you do have to, I had to start learning some mindfulness around actually you cannot sustain a schedule, even though entrepreneurship, startup life does does an extraordinary time. I think you do have to find those blocks of health. And I have a trick. I take a 20-minute nap every day.
Oh, nice. Like
midday.
After lunch, before lunch, or?
Literally, if you're talking to me at 2 p.m. Pacific time, you will see me. Like, I just can't. I can't do it anymore. So you will see me under a desk. You will see me standing in a corner. It's a little bit of a team joke, like, oh, she needs to go take her 15-20-minute nap. And that's sort of my way of truly just shutting down. And
you do that also just in the office, anywhere?
Anywhere, anytime. But it's actually that time bound. I think I have to shut down and regroup. And I'm trying to learn a little bit more from others around, just because you're available to work doesn't mean it's efficient work. It doesn't mean it's your best work. So what about recommendations about working in blocks that are tighter? So I'll keep learning and growing. That's the idea.
Nice. And then, and you, I mean, we had a previous call and conversation about something, about SoEd, in which you explained that the biggest challenge for adults to learn is time, actually. And so how does that work? Like, how did you come to that insight, and how do you solve that? How have you resolved that?
Yeah, and I think it came to me by working early on in the field in poverty alleviation projects and in disaster relief, where you can imagine that not only are the resources hard to come by, but just the act of survival is so intense that this idea that you would be able to walk into a classroom, sit for an hour, is an extraordinary privilege. And even to get there, bus rides, all of the transportation requirements, is an incredible privilege of time and access that a lot of people assume the majority has. And it's actually very few people, as you know well. How many people are lacking access to internet? Right? Close to 4
billion. Yeah.
4 billion. Think about that for a second. Internet is a way to drive efficiency, or it's also a way to spend lots of time surfing on things that don't matter, but it is a tool that can drive efficiency. So I learned with multiple studies that it's absolutely amazing how limited somebody's free time is, and that they have to use time multitasking. And we are not designing necessarily for the requirement for multitasking. So early on, when we did our first 2-year randomized controlled trial study for SoEd, that was one of the things we were looking at very clearly. When were they able to get those 3 minutes or that 10 minutes to study? And it was all of these interesting points with their folding laundry, somebody would be, or they were at work at a break, actually in the middle of driving. I mean, was about almost doubling your time.
Wow.
So I think if we think like that, and that knowing that few people have it, we have to get very efficient and honor what is the pain point we're solving for with that information. And do remember that we're human, and that people need to be, I would say, connected as a human. It needs to be engaging and interesting and fun and authentic. So that's where we came up with that. Save time, but also be engaging and authentic.
And then what? Because it's also behind you on the banner. Like, so what can somebody learn in 3 minutes? Because it seems like such a short amount of time.
I know. I get professors look at me. This is like it's a deal breaker. They see that, they're like, you can learn nothing, because they've been doing 90-minute 3-hour lecture, some days all days. And I was like, actually, you can learn not only foundational skills, like learning to read in your first language, you can also learn the necessary tips and tricks to navigate daily life. Why would you spend more time if they already don't have enough time, if most people don't have time to gather food and to get affordable housing and to live? So I would say you can learn, and it's because you're stacking those units and doing two-way engagement and pairing with a live coach. It's not just, I'm going to get it and be done. It's reinforcement that's needed. So there's a lot of learning science behind it. But the point is, you can deliver a concrete skill in a fraction of the time.
Mm. And then do you not see a growing need for this as well for let's say, other professionals as well? I mean, because you know, you described your day and how you juggle everything. I think more and more people have that issue where they just can't find the time to learn. I mean, even for somebody working in an office, it can be hard now to say, I'm going to spend the whole day in a classroom, right? So maybe everybody needs these 3 minutes learning things throughout their day, right?
100%. And when we had our early testing, we actually found it was truly the white collar professionals that were demanding at the two extremes of SoEd. But we're mission driven. We're here to reach the scale of need for the greatest need. We have at least 30 to 60% of adults in countries around the world who are at a level 1 proficiency in reading and math and digital literacy. That actually blocks you from just about all online resources, ability to apply for a job. Like, it's such a fundamental gap that we will spend a lifetime at SoEd working just there.
Yeah. So is your mission, I think you mentioned originally your mission was to end illiteracy, right? Is that still your mission, or what's SoEd's mission?
Well, we started by, we said we wanted to start with the greatest need. What is truly the greatest need out there in mobile learning and access to opportunity? What's preventing people from thriving? And it really was an inability to read in one's language and navigate on their own terms. So we had, at that time when we started, 800 million, just about 800 million adults who couldn't read in their first language. The next layer are those who don't have enough of the reading, the writing, the competence. But I would also argue they're not also in enough power to drive their agenda. People, once they have this empowerment, or if you will, just ability to determine their own future, they will be the ones that drive innovation in the future, because they'll start to tell the technologists out there, the creators out there, what is really needed, instead of us making it up as we go.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to go back to something you said earlier, a bit different, but you mentioned you've traveled to 40 countries, right? So how did that change you? What did you learn from your travels, both personally and for your work?
Yeah, I think that's just, I find travel and being invited to a home, collaborating on a project, being humbled by the ways of knowing and doing that are different from my own, the greatest educator I've ever had. So I'm deeply committed to the power of learning other stories, traditions, histories. Most of those were on projects specifically around poverty alleviation and co-creating solutions. So every one of them opened a door of understanding, presented a challenge that was extremely daunting, that helped me understand, and my team and others that I've worked with, understand how to push a little bit further into these dreams we have about bridging divides. And I've been really fortunate to be invited to participate locally in projects and in different languages, which I also think is key. Operating in another language, a second or third language, is, I think, also key to understanding other ways of knowing and doing, different knowledge traditions, and actually having to live a day in the life and work through it is also a challenge, and an important one if you want to essentially work together to create a solution.
Mm. And what's one of the biggest misconceptions that you learned about yourself that you had from when you were younger, from traveling and meeting different cultures? Something that really surprised you, or?
That I find, I would say that I was always thinking it's got to be relative. There's always something unique, and I have to always be watching for the unique. But I have to say, humor is almost universal. Like, it is the truest emotion. And I think one of the greatest achievements I've ever had is to tell a joke well in a second language. Like, if I really get it right, then it's like, oh, all the doors open. But at least the trying to connect has opened so much for me. So I would say that misconception too is that I think this idea that number of countries checking off on a map is meaningful is a real challenge. I actually say it's really, truly having to see a way of knowing and doing very different than your own. So it's a high bar.
Yeah. Okay. And we have 5 minutes left, so I think we want to keep a few minutes to talk about some of your current initiatives.
Okay.
But the last kind of open question I have: do you have a dream? What's your dream? You've already fulfilled several. What is your? Do you still have a dream?
That's amazing. Living the dream is incredible. I think right now would be together to reach millions of users, actually, to truly reach the scale of need. Because I've had this great fortune of working deeply on these projects in different places. But what if we could truly provide opportunity to millions, if not even a billion? So actually, for me, it's reaching the scale of need that's really driving my team and I. And then maybe what would be fun is to sort of, what are ways that we could invite more people to do this work? How could we welcome people to say, trust me, you can try something different, do sort of work, because I know there's a lot of interest in it. There's just not a lot of rule books or training out there for this kind of putting together of social entrepreneurship in tech at scale. And so I feel like that's another piece and responsibility that we have to figure out how to pull it together. I don't know if it'll be called the SoEd way or tips and tricks. Like we have 5 doors, we have lots of tips and tricks. So maybe we'll pull those together and see what you think.
What do you look for in people when you hire for your team? Because I had the chance to talk to a few of them. They all seem like really great people. Do you have specific traits you look for, or a secret sauce in hiring?
Oh, no question. Kindness is what matters.
Uh-huh.
And ability to tell your own story in your own way, and honoring how different that is across your team. So everybody's an individual, but collectively we bring more to the table because actually we just bring different perspectives. We are a fully globally distributed team. It does require us to learn new ways. So yeah, we do welcome that. And honor is one of our core values. So really honoring what we need to deliver in terms of the promise to our learners, promise to our partners, and to each other. So there's only a few people that want to pause there and really spend time to see how important that is as an organizing principle for a group of people.
That's nice. Okay, then what's coming up with SoEd? I know you're working on a big project that you've just announced.
Yeah.
What is the 1 million learner challenge?
It's a sign that we're impatient. So we're like, okay, under COVID-19, 44% of households in the US don't have digital access, 59% at a minimum internationally, but people aren't having access to information to stay safe, not access to remote learning and healthcare. So, okay, we're just going to go direct and offer 1 million seats and see if we can build from there. So it's actually just reaching directly, learning from and growing our direct to learner base. And we're excited about that.
And who are you working with? Like, how are you going to bring in those 1 million learners? I saw some impressive names.
We're working with KaiOS.
Yeah, but I was not referring to ourselves, of course.
No, but actually, the fact that we're working on Tech Lifelines together is an inspiration to the team. We're also working with those who are, let's just call them, absolutely committed to ending non-literacy or illiteracy for adult learners, because the ripple effects on families and communities are so strong. So that would include major foundations and luminaries in that space. We're also really working with large governments, if you will, like even the state of California and New York are interested in pushing the divide. But we're also going to be inviting more people to the table. If they feel like they want to provide a localized reach to with SoEd, we want to hear from you, because it doesn't have to just be 1 million.
Can be more.
Why not? It's our job to keep pushing the limits, right?
Yeah. Okay, that's great.
Global messaging, right?
Yeah. And any other projects that you're working on or that are important to share?
Yes. Yeah, we had it over a year in development now, and it was timely, especially around this current crisis. We have launched CellMed. It's also, now we have 100% remote learning, but this is 100% telehealth. solution to train also health workers and to provide access to that, because actually that's another extreme challenge in need area. So we're excited to share more about the work we're doing there. So between remote health and telehealth, we figure we can be a friend at the table.
It's amazing. It's you're doing great work. It was really an honor to have you here. Where can people follow you? Where should they go if they want to know more?
Where this is my open call to folks who do social media well and marketing communication. That is a new job descriptions at SoEd.
Yes.
But for now, you'll find us at our website, essentially at www.cell-ed.com. And then ultimately, or please reach out. I am first and foremost here to provide at least my perspective and advice that we have. And you can find me as well on social media and LinkedIn and my team.
All right. Thanks so much, Jessica.
Or join the Million Challenge.
Yes, you will
right
read more about it as well, both at KOS and at SoEd. All right, thanks so much, Jessica, and thanks everybody else for watching, and we'll see you again in the next episode of Enabling Tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for Thank you.
Bye-bye.